This week on Vaticano, the environmental teachings of the Church become the focus of attention for the CEOs of some of the world's biggest oil companies that gathered at the Vatican. The Expedition 53 crew of the International Space Station invited Pope Francis to explore the universe. Discover with us the heroic life of the Fair Commissioner Giovanni Palatucci and enjoy the spiritual elevation in his honor. For this and more, Vaticano starts now. The high-speed Italian train Frecciarossa brought a delegation of 500 children from the outskirts of Milan and Rome to the Vatican. It's the 6th edition of the initiative called Treno dei Bambini, the Italian for children's train, promoted by the Pontifical Council for Culture. With balloons in their hands and wearing big smiles, a group of children welcomed the Pope in front of the Paul VI audience hall, while other children remained inside, waiting to shower the pontiff with a storm of applause.
Mi chiamo Anna Greta.
One of the young guests, Anna Greta, asked Pope Francis if he could remember his first teacher.
La maestra si chiamava Stella.
The teacher was called Estella. She was good. She taught us how to read and write. She was very good. I've always remembered her after I finished school. Remembering our first teacher is very important because he or she is the first person that guides us in life.
After talking to their superhero, the children offered the Holy Father gifts that they had made with their own young hands. Pope Francis greatly appreciated the presents and in his turn gave his apostolic blessing. This week, the environmental teachings of the Church became the focus of attention for some of the world's biggest companies from the energy sector. Addressing the participants, Pope Francis said that civilization requires energy, but energy use must not destroy civilization.
Hence the need to devise a long-term global strategy able to provide energy security and, by laying down precise commitments to meet the problem of climate change, to encourage economic stability, public health, the protection of the environment, and integral human development.
Impegni precisi per affrontare il problema dei cambiamenti climatici.
The two-day conference entitled Energy Transition and Care for Our Common Home gathered leaders from oil industry companies such as ExxonMobil, Eni, BP, Royal Dutch Shell, Equinor and Pemex at the Vatican. The conference was promoted by the Pontifical Academy of Sciences in collaboration with Notre Dame University. This week, the Holy Father welcomed the Bishops' Conference of Scandinavia in their Ad Limina visit. The Scandinavian Bishops' Conference is made up of 5 countries: Denmark, Iceland, Finland, Sweden and Norway. The Catholic Church is an absolute minority in predominantly Protestant Scandinavia, but the decision taken last year to create the first ever Cardinal of Sweden, Anders Arborelius, was a big step in supporting the Catholic population in this northern European region. The Holy Father welcomed the Prime Minister of Poland, Mateusz Morawiecki, to the Apostolic Palace. The two leaders discussed themes such as family policy, the protection of creation, and the reception of refugees. Poland is one of the most Catholic countries in Europe, with 87.5% of people out of a total population of 40 million being part of the Catholic faith.
Station, this is Isa PAO here in the Vatican. How can you hear me?
Last year, on the 26th of October, Pope Francis communicated with the crew of the International Space Station via a live audiovisual connection.
Jules, Isa PAO in the Vatican. This is Space Station. We hear you loud and clear.
Very good, thank you. I now hand over to Pope Francis.
Good morning, you all.
Expedition 53 is made up of 6 astronauts. 1 of them is from Italy, 2 hail from Russia, and 3 from the United States. The Italian space engineer Paolo Nespoli conducted the conversation and provided translations. The Pope asked the astronauts 5 questions on topics as varied as the place of humanity in the universe to the personal desires of the astronauts to explore space.
What do you think of calling love the force that moves the universe?
Answering these questions, Russian cosmonaut Alexander Misurkin said that he'd found the answer in Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's book, The Little Prince.
The best example of what love is represented in this book, because this small boy was ready to give his life to come back, protect and take care of his unique flower. I like this answer, and it's true. Without love, we wouldn't be able to give our life for another person.
On the question regarding what motivated them to become astronauts and what they enjoyed about being in space, Russian cosmonaut Sergei Ryazansky said that he'd followed in the footsteps of his grandfather.
My story started with my grandfather, who was main chief engineer and participated in first man-built satellite Sputnik. And for me, it's a great honor to continue what he was doing to fulfill his dreams.
The U.S. astronaut and mission commander Randolph Bresnik said he enjoyed looking through the illuminators and seeing God's creation maybe a little bit from his perspective.
As we see that the peace and serenity of our planet as it goes around at 10 kilometers a second, and there's no borders, there is no conflict, it's just peaceful. And you see the thinness of the atmosphere. It makes you realize how fragile our existence here is.
The video connection lasted about 20 minutes and connected the Vatican with the International Space Station 220 miles away.
Signore benedica voi.
May the Lord bless you, your work, and your families. I can assure you that I will pray for you. And you too, please pray for me. Thank you.
Pregate per me. Grazie.
On returning from their 6-month voyage into space, the Expedition 53 team from the International Space Station paid a visit to Pope Francis at the Vatican.
Since you spoke to us while we were in space, we thought that it would be good to make a spacesuit just like ours for you.
L'abito fa il monaco, giusto? Di fare una tuta di volo come le nostre.
Ah, va bene.
With this personalized blue flight suit, the crew invited the Holy Father to explore space. The outfit also came with a white mantle, emphasizing the fact that the Pope would represent the universal church in the universe. Sergei Ryazansky is a member of the Russian Orthodox Church, and his family have had priests for 7 generations, but he was equally delighted to meet the Holy Father.
First of all, he's an amazing person, and I felt it when we were talking with him from above, from International Space Station.
Sergei says that from on high, the perception of the world is very different. The Earth is not divided by borders. Those are in people's minds. The members of the crew are from different countries and different faiths, and Sergei says such differences should never be a cause for conflict.
We were working together, and we talked together, discussed, and what is inside each of us, and it only helps us to work as a team.
Pope Francis became the 2nd Pope to talk via live streaming to astronauts orbiting the Earth. The first was Pope Benedict XVI in 2011. Although the Vatican link with the International Space Station was established recently, the Church has taken a great interest in science and astronomy throughout history. Discover more about the Vatican Observatory La Specola in our next story. Stick around for more on Vaticano. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. Not only is the Vatican holding a live link-up with the International Space Station, but it also has its own observatory. And it's right here, 20 miles away from the city of Rome by the volcanic Lake Albano, where the air is cleaner and the nights are darker. At these laboratories works the Pope's astronomer Jesuit brother Guy Consolmagno. Since 2015, the brother has been the director of this special observatory. But is the Church interested in astronomy?
There's a very practical reason why the Church has an astronomer. And it got started 125 years ago, 1891. Pope Leo XIII was looking for a way to show the world that the Church supports science.
Since that time, the group of scientists include every field of astronomy, practicing both faith and science.
So my own field is planetary sciences. I'm interested in how planets were formed 4.5 billion years ago. We have a collection of meteorites here at the Vatican that was donated by a wonderful nobleman 100 years ago. And we measure their physical properties. We put together tables of the density and the porosity and the magnetic properties and the thermal properties. And the rest of the scientific world uses our data.
The Vatican Observatory, also called the Specola Vaticana, is one of the brightest examples of the fruitful collaboration between the Church and the scientific world, although this partnership can, to a lot of people, seem contradictory.
You've got somebody here who's got an MIT ring and a collar. I love wearing both of them together because it shocks people out of the idea that somehow science and religion are opposed. They're not opposed. They don't have to be opposed. And anybody who tells you they are opposed is selling you something. And you got to be suspicious. What are they trying to sell you?
Brother Guy is sure that faith and science complement each other because they're answering different questions. Scripture tells that God created the universe, and science tells how he did it.
And when I see the stars in a place where it's really dark, I never cease to be amazed and just have my breath taken away. And every now and then, I'll stop seeing the sky as a dome with dots on it, which frankly, that's the way we all think of it. And suddenly I can realize that Milky Way is a disk of stars and I'm in the middle of it.
Here at one of the oldest astronomical institutes in the world, faith and reason work together to discover how great God's creation is. In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. More on Vaticano begins now. On February 10th, 1945, not long after the end of the war, a young police commissioner, Giovanni Palatucci, died in the Dachau concentration camp. He was only 36 years old. Declared righteous among the nations by the government of Israel in 1990 and a 20th century martyr by John Paul II in the year 2000, today the servant of God, Giovanni Palatucci, continues to arouse admiration amongst those who approach his history, amongst those who read about his history. But who was this young police commissioner admired both by Jews and Catholics, and why did he end his days in Dachau? To understand Palatucci's figure and how he made a heroic path to holiness out of his work, you need to start from the very beginning. Giovanni Palatucci was born on May 31st, 1909 in Montella, a small village in central Italy. He grew up in a deeply Catholic family. After graduating in law in 1936, he decided to move to Genoa and to volunteer for the position of Vice Commissioner of the Italian National Police. From the beginning of his career at the Genoa police station, Giovanni Palatucci was always uncomfortable because he was unable to accept injustice and was never afraid to express his disagreement. And it was precisely his rectitude that led him to anger his superiors, who punished him by sending him to Fiume, a small town right on the border with Croatia. This punishment actually became an opportunity for Palatucci because from his position as commissioner in charge of the immigration office of Fiume, he was able to save the lives of thousands of Jews and people persecuted for political reasons. So he did by creating from his office a network of collaborators that helped him channel the flight of thousands of people outside the territories occupied by the fascist Nazi regime. After September 8, 1943, with the annexation of Fiume to the Third Reich, Palatucci's office's activity intensified, and the young commissioner became a reference of humanity and salvation for all those persecuted citizens. Despite the danger he faced every day, Palatucci continued his work until he was arrested by the Gestapo in September 1944. Accused of high treason, he was deported to the Dachau concentration camp in Germany, where he died a martyr in February 1945. From the end of the war all the way up to our days, the young commissioner's fame of sanctity has increased. In honor of Palatucci, numerous initiatives are still being organized with the aim of making the heroic life of the last Fiume commissioner known. Without going any further, in February of this year, 2018, the Church of St. Ignatius of Loyola in Rome celebrated a spiritual elevation in honor of Giovanni Palatucci, servant of God. There we were able to speak with the rector of the church, Father Vitale Savio, who told us the origin of the initiative and brought us up to date on the process of canonization for the young commissioner.
Fondazione Amici di Giovanni Palatucci.
This nocturnal event was born because the foundation of John Palatucci Friends wanted to make a testimony to make him known, the servant of God, righteous among the nations, and the gold medal of the Italian state, and therefore an important personality in the Jewish world because he saved so many Jews during the last World War, and also for the Italian state for being a hero, and the Catholic Church as a person who gave his life for the salvation of others. The cause of beatification began in 2001. Now, Palatucci had been declared a servant of God in the diocesan cause, and we are waiting to make the Positio, which is a book in which all of the documents are collected and interpreted in order to submit them to the Congregation for the Saints, to make a compelling description of his cause of beatification. There were some opposing voices coming mainly from a historian who questioned the number of people saved by Palatucci. But apart from the numbers, there are many testimonies in history that say that Palatucci had saved many lives. We have the first years after the war, where the State of Israel planted 5,000 small trees in Tel Aviv, and also an avenue of 36 trees that are precisely the 36 years that had passed since he died in Dachau, February 10th, 1945.
È morto a Dachau il 10 febbraio 1945.
It's a fact that in spite of the controversies, Palatucci's reputation for sanctity continues to grow, and as Raffaele Camposano, director of the Historical Archive of the State Police, confirmed to us, the figure of the young curator continues to inspire the work of all those who are part of the police force.
Sicuramente è una figura di incoraggiamento.
Figure of encouragement that occupies the second place after our patron saint, Michael the Archangel, the prince of the angels who fought against the devil. Well, in this battle of good versus evil, Palatucci is also our protector, and above all, our point of reference. For his heroic virtues that we are sure will be praised, Palatucci encourages us every day in our action, especially for opening our hopes towards solidarity and charity with other people. His example and sacrifice makes us better understand that generosity, solidarity, and love for our neighbors, and so on, should also be respected in the service of the law, especially the law that respects the life and freedom of people. Palatucci is very present nowadays.
La vita e la libertà delle persone.
Before starting the concert, we were able to chat with the musical and artistic director of Spiritual Elevation, Monsignor Pablo Colino, Canon and Master of Chapel Emeritus of the St. Peter's Basilica. When asked why the event had been called a spiritual elevation and not a concert, Archbishop Colino simply replied this.
Because the character is eminently of spiritual value, above the cultural, above the historical, above all propaganda. It is mainly of spiritual value because it is the testimony of a martyr who easily could have escaped martyrdom. But when one appears without saying anything before martyrdom, we can not only bow, but kneel before such an example, before a Holocaust. But of course, it is not an exhibition concert. We wanted the concert to attract attention and to awaken admiring interest and, if possible, imitation. Imitating and doing good has to be a seal for all Christians. We know that one died for all, Christ. Well, knowing that a policeman also died for so many, well, it's an example.
In
the first part, we sing 3 psalms, as if it were a canonical work.
Era una hora canónica.
Three psalms that imply the lauds, the matins, the half hour. 3 psalms that have vespers.
3 salmos tiene la hora media, 3 salmos tiene las vísperas. Y entonces el primer salmo además va a ser en hebreo.
The first psalm is going to be in Hebrew, composed by none other than Schubert.
Compuesto nada menos que por Schubert. El segundo salmo en latín.
The second psalm in Latin.
Y el tercer salmo.
And the third is in Italian. This is the first part.
Luego, el segundo capítulo es el de la caridad.
The second chapter is that of charity, because the greatest example of charity is, as Jesus tells us, no one loves as much as one who gives his life for the other.
Nadie ama tanto como quien da la vida por sus amigos. Pues es la caridad. La caridad, y entonces cantamos
Well, we sing the most beautiful charity hymn that exists in the Gregorian chant, Ubi Caritas, harmonized by de Reflet. Then in Italian, one of the most beautiful translations that have been made of this Latin song, Where Charity Reigns.
Para que pueda ser participado por sí. Y es donde reina la caridad, allí estás presente. Y luego el tercer canto de la caridad es una cantatina.
And in the third place, the magnificent Rossini cantata, La Carità, Rossini composed the 3 theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity.
Fe, esperanza y caridad. Y como también dice San Pablo que
And as St. Paul himself also says, the most beautiful of the virtues is charity, That's why Rossini's composition to Charity is more beautiful than the other two.
Que es más bonita que la fe y la esperanza. Terminamos con la oración a María.
And then we ended with the prayer to Mary, Mary, Queen of Martyrs, who could not miss this appointment. So we sang the Mascagni's Ave Maria, and then the Virgin of the Angels protect everyone, alive and deceased, Regina degli Angelis by Giuseppe Verdi.
A musical program with which Monsignor Pablo Collino and his collaborators raised the spirit of Giovanni Palatucci, righteous among the nations and servant of God, who today continues his journey towards the glory of the altars.